Hello and welcome everyone to our presentation of Text2Pos, which is the first method for city scale localization based on text descriptions. We came up with this method when we tried to meet in our favorite spot in Munich and tried to order a pizza there. On these apps, you're supposed to give the directions as text, but our meeting spot doesn't really have an address. So what we ended up doing is describing relative objects around it and then hoping that the driver would find the position based on this description. So this gave us the idea to extend AI-based localization to natural language-based queries, which can then be used to schedule autonomous vehicle pickups or deliveries, and users should be able to do this without being at the place or even knowing any technical coordinates. As a formal problem statement, we wish to do city-scale localization where the position is described as text. And this would give us on the database side a 3D point cloud based on RGB data and instances. And in our case, it was derived from LiDAR data. And on the query side, we would have a pose with a text description of surrounding objects, making the task to then provide a position estimate for that query. Since we are the first ones to study this problem, we also had to come up with a data set. And what we found was that the existing Kitty 360 already covers 80 kilometers of labeled driving data as point cloud from different city districts here in Germany. And it does fulfill our map part of a point cloud representation with instances and semantics. But what was still missing is the query part of text position pairs. In our case, to keep things simple, we generated these positions by sampling poses all along the driving trajectories and then automatically generating descriptions based on a template language of each of these poses, which led us to roughly 15,000 positions and almost 45,000 descriptions in total. Although this made some simplifications by choosing this simple template, we have kind of restricted the vocabulary and we still require object instances in our point cloud map. Based on this data set, we were then able to develop a first method, which features a coarse to fine pipeline. As a coarse step, we first divide the map into rectangular regions called cells, and then train a joint embedding between the text query and these region cells in order to do a top K cell retrieval. Afterwards, what follows is a fine model that goes through the text query. And for each instance of an object that's mentioned in the text, it tries to match it to one of the objects in the retrieved cells and then regress a translation offset vector. And if you calculate those together, you can come up with a more refined position estimate. Looking at our first results, what we did initially was do a random experiment, and especially replacing the coarse part of our model shows very little accuracy, which is to be expected given the large size of our maps. Afterwards, we applied our full model first with just the coarse part and then the coarse and fine parts. And we show that we can localize up to 74% of the queries given a top 10 retrieval and a 15 meters localization threshold. And what we can also see here is that the fine model increases almost all accuracies, especially for the more narrow localization thresholds. Digging deeper into this, we also added some oracle experiments showing that especially the coarse part of our model can still be improved significantly. And going even further on this, we added an additional queue into these text queries, which in our case was synthetic street names, and this brought up the accuracy considerably. So to give you some takeaways, we were the first ones to introduce this new task of city-scale language-based localization. We can already localize 74% of queries at top 10 and 15 meters, but this leaves improvements in future work, both for model improvements and adding more queues to these descriptors in order to then overcome our current limitations. And with that, I wish to thank you for your interest and for listening.